let's go ahead and get started since it is already 12 o'clock and I want to be mindful of people's time. My name is Dr. Kirsten Kump. I work at the Undergraduate Research Hub. I am joined by the Assistant Director of the Undergraduate Research Hub, Dr. Sophia Zaineri.
Hello.
And we're very excited that we're going to get the chance to talk to you about how to present your research. As hard as it is to believe, the conference is just around the corner, and I think it's going to be fantastic. This is a flagship event that a lot of the people at the university just really love. They love to see the event itself. It's a wonderful opportunity to see a number of researchers presenting their work. And they also are very proud of you because they know that each student presenter has worked tremendously hard this summer and has really done a lot of amazing work. So we're excited for this event. I will be talking about a couple of different things, but before we get going, I'd like to just get a sense from everyone in terms of what institution you're from. You may or may not know that many of the student presenters at the Summer Research Conference are from UC San Diego, but we also have students from a number of other institutions. So if you wouldn't mind just putting into the chat what institution you're from, I'd love to see. Okay, so quite a few UC San Diego and a couple of other, University of Colorado, I think, SDSU, lots of different uh, options there. So it's great. That's wonderful to see people from all over here. Um, and having said that, I also do want to encourage people to be interactive. I know that this is a Zoom presentation, but we do like to have some feedback and there'll be some opportunities for you to weigh in. So please don't hesitate to weigh in either via chat or by unmuting. The session is being recorded, and so just please be aware of that. And without any further ado, we can go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay, so to give you a sense of what we'll talk about, this presentation is going to be in two different parts. First, we'll be talking about general presentation design and how to present your research in an oral format in general. So we'll talk about designing it, organizing the presentation itself, and a few final tips. And then we'll have time for some Q&A. And then the second part will be focusing specifically on the Summer Research Conference. So we have it designed this way so that we can kind of be a little bit focused and make sure that we are talking about both of those elements, because both of those are really important to cover. And we do have a Q&A portion at the end of each of those because we know that it is difficult to cover everything and there may be questions that come up. In general, if there's any questions as I'm saying something and you want some clarification, please feel free to put that in the chat or to unmute and ask. If it's a general question that's not something for clarification, we ask if you can possibly wait and save it for the Q&A. Sometimes we find that the chat gets so crowded with so many questions and people are focused on the questions in the chat and reading the answers in the chat, and they don't listen to the presentation, which often addresses those very questions. So again, anything for clarification, please feel free to jump on in either via the chat or by unmuting. But if it's a general question, hang on to it until the Q&A portion. So I already asked to get a sense of where people are from and what institutions are with us today. I also want to get a sense in the chat, how are people feeling about the conference? What are your thoughts in terms of, are you feeling excited, apprehensive, ready, nervous but excited, confident, nervous, excited? Yeah. Okay. A great mix of things. And I think many of you may be feeling all of those things all at the same time. For a lot of the students at the Summer Research Conference, this is the first time that you're presenting. So that can be a little overwhelming. Even if you've presented many times, it can feel a little nerve-wracking to present. But know that you've got this. Know that you have been working very hard on your research. You are an expert in it now. You've spent this summer and in some instances longer focusing on this research topic. And so you know what you're doing and you will do just fine. So use those nerves to kind of give you energy, but don't let them overwhelm you. All right, so for the next slide, you'll see that the details are available. The conference itself is on August 13th and 14th. Oh, I am so sorry. I was at the wrong part of looking at it. My apologies. So looking at the next slide, we're going to start by talking about formatting and design. Somebody just asked if the audio got worse. Are people having a hard time hearing me? Okay, everyone's okay. Sounds like it's fine. If it does start to have some problems, Dr. Tsagneri, if you can let me know and I'll switch to headphones. Okay, so formatting and design tips. Again, we're starting by talking about general issues related to putting together a presentation. And there's a lot that goes into putting a presentation together. So we want to go over a few of those things. Next slide, please. Okay, when presenting, remember that slides are not the presentation. Slides guide the presentation. You're giving the presentation, you're not reading it. Keep this presentation simple. One way to do this, all right, let me take a step back. That was not an ideal presentation style. And this slide perhaps is not ideal. Can anyone unmute and give some thoughts in terms of what could be better, either about the way I started with this slide or about the slide itself? Peter.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Peter.
Uh, yeah, so there's a lot on the text, and then in terms of just presenting style, just making sure that you know you slow down and make sure that the audience is able to understand you.
Okay, great. So he said there's a lot on the text, probably needing to slow down so that the audience can understand me. I think I saw that Marco had his hand up.
Yeah, going along with what Peter said, it's just too busy. And then also the coloring and some of the text, it's depending on what room you are, it could be really harsh on the eyes. So we see something there, but we don't know what it is. So we have no way of, the audience has no way of knowing what you're trying to present when you have such harsh colors up.
Excellent. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I see in the chat there's a too wordy as well. So when you look at this slide, it's a lot. It's too many words. It's not really feasible to read through it, particularly the ones where it's that blue color. There's not enough contrast. You're focusing more on, am I able to read that, than you are on what the content of it is. Certainly the way I was reading it was too fast, hard for people to understand, hard for people to hear. And just reading what was on there. So we'll go through some of these items one by one, but it seems like all of you already have a good sense of some things not to do. Next slide. Okay, so here's a little comic saying, okay, now I'm going to read out loud every single slide for you, word for word, until you all wish you'd just die. We have probably all been in those types of presentations where somebody is looking at the slide and reading every bit of it word for word. And although that does give you the sense of I'm not missing anything, I'm not having to decide between paying attention to the wording and what I'm hearing, it's also not very interesting and doesn't really give you the sense of engagement. So the slides will guide your presentation, but they shouldn't be word for word what you're saying. Next item. Keep it simple. Again, that previous slide had so much information on it that it really wasn't possible to focus and get a sense of what the main points are. You really want to keep things simple. You will have, and we'll talk about this later, but you'll have a very brief time to present. If you're presenting on your own, it's 12 minutes. If you're presenting with a partner, it's 16 minutes. That's not long at all. And you really want to think about, at the end of this presentation, what do I want the audience to know? And if you have too many details, instead of them knowing all of those details, they're just going to end up not really knowing any of it. Next item. Concise bullet points help you to keep it simple. It also kind of helps you to organize it. Minimal text is good. You just want it to be something where, as you're speaking, it helps the audience follow along like an outline, but it's not explaining everything that you're saying. And images can certainly help. It kind of keeps it interesting, but I recommend not more than 1 or 2 graphics per slide, because otherwise, again, it gets to be too much and it's hard to know where to focus. Next slide. Oh, simple backgrounds. Yes. Sometimes people do a presentation and the background is beautiful and you look at it, but it's distracting. Sometimes it makes it difficult to read what's on the slide. And it's really, you're not here to design the most beautiful presentation or the most intriguing visual presentation you can. You're here to convey the information. So keep the background simple so that it doesn't interfere with the message that you're trying to get across. So there's a question about using different colors to distinguish backgrounds, and we'll get to that in just a second. Control visibility with simple animations. So animations are where you have the next part of the slide come in as you're talking about it. That's what's happening right now. So the control visibility with simple animations meant that that line was there before anything else from this slide was. So it was easy for people to focus on that. Then when it moves to the next part, be consistent comes up and you see the next thing that you want to be focusing on. So in terms of the consistency, it's good to be consistent in terms of font and color and that sort of thing. You don't want it to be something where there's too much going on and you have Times New Roman here, and then you have Gothic, and then you have some other font, because what will happen is people will try to figure out if there's a meaning behind that, and that in and of itself gets to be distracting. So just use the same font throughout, or at least use it at, like if you're doing bullets, make sure that they're kind of at the right level of specificity, so don't have a sub bullet that doesn't fit under the bullet. So in terms of the question of possibly switching the background color with each section, I think that depends on how clear it is that that's what's going on. Again, you don't want it to be a distraction. You don't want it to be something where people are trying to figure out why it's a different color now. But if you feel like it might kind of help section off things, that would be fine. So think mostly in terms of, is this going to be a distraction or is this going to help people clarify things? In terms of the font, you definitely want it to be something that's easy to read. Again, you're not going for the most intriguing or beautiful visual look. You want something that's just easy for people to read and not going to take away from the message. You also want it to be at least 18 plus. We'll talk a little bit more about the size of the rooms that you'll be in, but even the smaller rooms, the audience won't be sitting right, like I'm a couple feet away from my computer screen right now. Your talk will be projected onto a screen, but it's still something where having it large really makes a difference. You want it to be something where everyone in the room is able to see it, not just the people at the front of the room. Next, please. Contrasting colors. We already talked a little bit about this. That first slide had that kind of light blue color against a white background, which was very difficult to see. Some of the rooms have really nice lighting and it's easy to see things. Some of them have a lot of natural light and there's only so much we can do to kind of eliminate that light. And so you want it to be something where it'll be very, very easy to see the text that you have, even if the lighting in the room isn't ideal. Next, please. Don't be afraid to go big. I think a lot of times people feel that, they don't want to be overly bold, but really you want it to be big. You want it to be something where it's easy for the audience to see. Again, they shouldn't be spending a ton of time focused on reading your slides. They should really be listening to you, and the slides are helping them just kind of keep track of what you're saying. So you want legible charts, including legends. This is work that you've been doing for a long time. When you put a legend or a chart up there or a graph or something like that, it may be completely obvious to you as to what it's talking about. It won't be to everyone in the audience. So you want it to be, and you'll need to walk them through any charts or graphs that you have. We'll talk about that in a moment. But you also want it to be something where even if you're not walking them through it, you'll have enough labels and legends and things that it's easy for them to know what the chart is talking about. Again, this is tricky because if you have a lot of charts, you don't want to have too many on any single page, so that means more slides. So you may need to decide which charts you'll include and which ones you won't. You may not have time to talk about everything that you would like to for the presentation. Bigger font size, bigger is almost always better when it comes to these types of presentations. You can always split information across slides. So if you find, oh, I've created this slide and I'm talking about this, and suddenly I have 10 bullet points all on this slide and 3 different graphs, that's too much for one slide. You can have a new slide and divide that up so that there's not too much on any given slide. So formatting and design tips. Let's take a look at this. What do you all think about these, I guess they're charts and tables? Any thoughts? Too much. What do I look like? Background seems random, hard to understand quickly, too dense. Yeah, a lot of these, it's a little hard for me to see everything in the chat, but everything that you're commenting is great. So we'll start with the background. It's kind of random. Like I'm not entirely sure what it is, and it's maybe the talk is related to what this is, but it's certainly not clear, and it's perhaps a little distracting. A couple people said too dense. What do I look at? That is, I think, the biggest thing when you have a chart or a table or a graph. You look at it, and by the time you figure out what the chart is telling you, the presenter has moved on. So then it doesn't really serve its purpose. It doesn't help you understand the research that was done. Think of it in that way. Everything that you say and everything that you have on your presentation should be helping you to convey to the audience members the research that you did, what you did, why it's important, what you found, what you hope to do next. Everything should be focusing on that. And when you have tables or charts like this, that's not going to help that at all. The font is very small, it's very busy, you don't know what to look at. Next slide, please. This is much better. Although it still has quite a bit of information in it, there's this box around the numbers of interest. And I, as a presenter, would walk you through it and say, oh, this is a table that shows the demographic characteristics of the participants. And of particular interest is looking at the percentage of people who had a 4-year degree versus the percentage who had a master's degree. So I have the whole table up there, but I've done something to make it clear what you should be looking at. And then I also verbally say what you should be looking at. And I would go on to explain why that's relevant. Why am I highlighting that? Why is that something to pay attention to? Next slide. Okay, so in terms of organizing your presentation, this is a big part of the battle, kind of figuring out what you're going to talk about and how to organize it. You start typically with an introduction, introduce yourself, state your name, give the name of your mentor. Sometimes you'll have different mentors. Perhaps you have a faculty mentor, a PI, as well as a graduate student or a postdoc or others who are helping you. So feel free to acknowledge all of them. If they have an MD or a PhD or an MD, PhD, I would refer to them as doctor. And that would be the case whether they're a PI, like the faculty member, or a postdoc. It'd be Dr. Smith and Dr. Jones helped with this project. Include the title of your summer research program and the title of your project. That's just a nice way to introduce yourself to the audience. Also include information about sponsoring or applicable departments, grants, class, that sort of thing. You can talk to your mentor about whether there are any grants that are supporting this research. Your summer research program we already talked about, that's one source of funding. Sometimes your mentor might have another source of funding as well. So after you introduce yourself, you're going to want to give an introduction and background of the research that has already taken place and that kind of led to this point. Establish the academic context. You want to know why you want the audience to know why the research that you're going to be talking about is important, both important in the academic setting. So other people who have done research on this have gotten to this point, and this is the next question that we're answering, and to the larger world. So some of you might be doing research that has some real direct implications for society or real life applications. You can also mention that as well. You don't necessarily need to go into a lot of details, but setting that context is really helpful. It gives people a sense of why this research is important. You talk about the topic, talk about the previous literature, talk about the research question and goal. So, you kind of start very broad with the topic, and then you start narrowing it down a little bit to talk about this is what's been done before. And then you get down to the more narrow portion of this is what my goal was for this particular research. So you kind of see this big picture get narrowed down. And by the time you're talking about the question that you're asking, it should be almost obvious, like, oh, I see that based on what's been done before, this is a logical extension of that. This makes sense as a next step. And talking about why it's important. Okay, so then the body of the talk itself, this is kind of the key content. This is where you're talking about the research itself. So you're going to talk about the theoretical framework that how central that is to what you've done may vary from field to field. There's some fields that are very theoretically based, and talking about the framework is going to be critical. Others may be a little bit less so. You're definitely going to want to talk about the methodology, particularly if what you're doing is innovative in terms of methodology. You'll want to talk about the thesis or the hypotheses and what you anticipate happening, what you were trying to test, what you were hoping to find out, and then the results. You want to determine the best way to organize your presentation. So what we've talked about here may or may not fit with what fits for your specific talk. So I think somebody asked about what a theoretical framework might be. So again, that depends on the field. Some fields are very much something where, oh, there's a theory of how this works. So there's the planned behavior action theory. And so that states that X will lead to Y, which then leads to Z. So if there is kind of this theory in what you're doing, you want to talk about that and then talk about how the research that you're doing fits with that broader theory. So the theory kind of is more at an abstract level, and then you're talking about how you're operationalizing that, how you are putting that into practice. This is a great conversation to have with your mentor or mentors to kind of talk about, like, what would you say is the theoretical framework? Again, for some fields that might not make sense. Again, when you look at it and it says determine the best way to organize your presentation, what makes sense for a presentation I'm giving might be very different from what makes sense for a presentation that Sophia's giving, because we may be focused on very different things. And the fields that we're in may have very different conventions in terms of how presentations of these sorts go. So the things that we're listing, don't feel that you have to have every single one of these elements. This is where you'll want to look at the field, look at what's typically done in your discipline, talk with people in your research team, and particularly your mentor, and that will help guide it. Next. Think of the presentation as telling the story of your research. You want to engage people. You want them to kind of get excited about the research that you're doing, and you want to make sure that you're letting them know any key concepts. So this is one of the things that can be difficult, is knowing how much to explain things at a simple level versus how much to assume the audience already knows things. But the overarching guiding principle should be, what do you want people to know when they leave this presentation? What's the most important thing? Again, you're not going to have time to talk about everything that you've done this summer. You've done a lot. And even if things haven't gone the way you've wanted, you've still accomplished a lot. You won't have time to talk about that. So you're going to have to be very selective in terms of what's going to be the takeaway that I'm going to leave the audience with, and then tell a story around that. You also want to transition between ideas in a way that shows your logic. You don't want it to feel like you're hopping around. I know when I'm writing a paper, one thing that helps me make sure I'm doing this is write a sentence outline. So I write an outline that's just the topic sentence of each paragraph, and that helps me see whether the transitions I'm making make sense. So if I have a topic sentence here, and then the next paragraph has a topic sentence that is completely unrelated, I realize, oh, I need to ease into that a little bit more. I need to explain how I got from A to C because I need that paragraph in between that talks about B. So make sure that you're kind of thinking about this in a way that how you're talking about the research will help the audience see the progression of your thoughts. You'll also want a conclusion. Here's where you'll summarize your thesis and your key points. It's great if you had very specific hypotheses and you had a slide, say, that had the hypotheses within it. It's great sometimes to go back and show that slide again, and then show whether or not the hypotheses were borne out by the results. You kind of want to reiterate the significance, remind people about why you did this research, remind them about how the questions you were asking fit with the results that you have. And note that the results are not always going to fit with your hypotheses. There may be times that you expected one thing, all the previous literature suggested one thing, and it turns out that that's not what you found at all. And that is completely fine. We do research because we don't know the answers. We need to figure out the answers. So don't be thrown if you have this beautiful slide about your hypotheses, and then at the end you're having to say, and actually that's not what happened. Talk about potential applications or consequences. Again, this might vary from field to field. There may be some fields where there's real clear applications or consequences. There may be other fields where it's not as clear, but you can kind of talk about potential next steps. So this is the research that I did. We found this, which makes us wonder about that. So next steps that somebody might want to do would be X, Y, and Z. Or we found this, it wasn't what we expected, so we need to figure out why that was. And here's some things that we could maybe do to figure out why that was. So what are the implications of the results that you found? Future directions, just talked about that. Next steps, future directions, where things might go from here. And then acknowledgements. It's important to have an acknowledgement slide. This is kind of similar to the slide that you started with, but you really want to be explicit in thanking your mentors, research team members who might have helped, thank your program. Depending on your program, they probably have a logo or something along those lines that you can use and include. So reach out to your program coordinator so that you can find out what that might be. All right. You also should have references. You don't need to spend a lot of time talking about this, but it might be something where somebody in the audience is very excited to think about this more, and they want to see the references. So if you have it up there, they can look at it briefly. If in the question and answer portion of the presentation, they're like, oh, you cited something, then you can bring it back up again. And then finally, thank the audience. They're there because they're excited about your work, and so show them some appreciation. All right, so in terms of presenting itself, some of these things we've already talked about, but it's a good idea to kind of go through them again. Don't just read the slides. Again, not very interesting, not really going to be engaging for the audience. Explain each slide, especially tables, graphs, data, etc. Even if you've done a really good job of labeling things and highlighting things and stuff like that, remember, this is stuff that you've been working with. It's not necessarily something that your audience has been working with. And so you want to walk them through it so it's super clear for them exactly what the slide is showing and why that's important. You should allocate about a minute per slide. So if you have more on a slide than can be covered in a minute, you're probably going to need to divide those slides up a little bit. And if you have 30 slides for a 12-minute talk, you're going to need to cut some things out. And that, I think, can be the hardest part of preparing a presentation. Slow down. No matter how slowly you think you're going, slow down. you will be going faster than you think, especially because of nerves on the day. People have a tendency to go faster than they think they are, and to kind of mumble and speak softer than they think they are. So just take a deep breath, slow down. And if you lose your train of thought and you feel like, oh, this is a big slowdown, like I've just stopped talking for 10 minutes, it might feel like 10 minutes. It's not. It might be 10 seconds. Don't worry about it. It feels much worse to you than to the audience. You know, everyone has those moments where their brain just freezes for a second. Don't worry about it. Don't let it throw you. Just kind of get back on track and keep going. Be confident in sharing the work you've done. I've kind of alluded to this, but you're really an expert on this. In fact, you are probably the biggest expert in the room. Your mentor might be there, and the mentor might have a really good sense of your project overall and how it fits into the big picture, but you're the one that has spent hours and hours and hours every week. So you're the one who knows this and knows it well. Dress appropriately. Think professional. It doesn't have to be anything super fancy by any means, but it should be more than jeans and a t-shirt. I do definitely recommend dressing in a way that's professional and comfortable. So you don't want a shirt that you're, having to tug at, or that you're worried that's too low, or a dress that's too high, and especially shoes. Try to find shoes that are comfortable, because you'll be walking around and you'll be on your feet, and it's a long day, long 2 days. So dress for comfort. Use a clicker if you have one. Business casual is a great way to think about the attire. And if you don't have anything that's appropriate, reach out to one of us, because there are some resources on campus for that. Use a clicker that can help you point to things on the slides and helps the audience see what you're talking about. And be sure to present to the audience. It's very easy to just be looking back here, like if here's where the presentation is and you're doing this and you're looking. Try to break yourself from that. It's much more engaging when you're talking to the audience. If you're facing them, it gives you a chance to see how they're responding to it. It helps them get drawn into the talk.
I think we do have a question, a clarification about references, if you don't mind going back in the chat.
Yeah, let me see here. If I'm including references to the literature throughout the slideshow at the bottom of my slides, do I still need to include a reference side? Probably not. I think that's kind of a personal decision. You shouldn't have the references on the slides take up so much room that in and of itself is distracting. You know, if it's there on the slides as you're doing it, you're fine not having it at the end.
There's a question about going over time, but we could also do that later.
Yep. Yeah, we should be hitting that. Okay, a few final tips. What if? This is the biggest what if the project is not finished. Trust me, there are over 170 of you in the room right now. I can guarantee you that there will be many of you for whom the project is not finished. That's part of this. Every year, there's a lot of people where the project's not finished, and that is fine. Don't worry about it. Don't stress about it. Don't feel like you need to pull all-nighters between now and the 13th to get everything all done. You know, certainly work hard, get your presentation done, but don't stress if you don't have the results, or the results are incomplete. A lot of you, the summer is a short time period, and although you're spending hours and hours and hours every day, it's still a short time period. Sometimes there's hiccups. Sometimes you're waiting for materials that you need to run the study and they don't come in. Sometimes you're waiting for IRB approval and it doesn't happen. Sometimes you go down one path and it doesn't pan out. All of that is fine. As this quote says, if we knew what we were doing, it would not be called research, would it? It's questionable as to whether Albert Einstein actually said that, but I think the sentiment is real. So just know it's okay. Next. So present what you have using preliminary results. If you have any results at all, that's great. And you can say, oh, these are very preliminary results. We don't know if these will hold once we have a chance to collect more data, or once we have a chance to do more analyses. That's fine. If you don't have any results at all, That's also fine. You can talk about anticipated results. This is kind of talking a little bit about the hypotheses in some ways. And so, this is the data that we collected. We're still in the process of collecting the data. This is what we anticipate happening, and this is what that would mean. If your results are not satisfactory or not complete, it's fine to explain why. It's fine to say, one of the challenges that we learned was it was a lot harder to recruit participants for this particular study than we anticipated. And so here's how we kind of tried to deal with that. We tried reaching out to other areas to recruit participants. You can talk about hiccups that you had. Wouldn't dwell on them. I wouldn't make the whole presentation about it, but part of research are these blocks in the road that happen sometimes. And so it's okay to talk about that. You can also talk about potential avenues for future work, especially if you discovered, we tried to do this study, it didn't work at all because of X, Y, or Z. Here's how we've thought about maybe trying to answer the same question, but in a different way. And this is what we might do as a next step. Focus on the context, the purpose, the goals, the big picture of why you were doing this. And again, it's fine if you don't know the results. You won't be the only one not finished. What if you don't know the answer to a question? There will be a Q&A time during it. Don't worry about the questions. Everyone in that room is excited about your research. The reason they're asking you questions is because they want to know more. So don't feel like it's adversarial at all. They're asking because they genuinely want to know. It's fine to say, oh, that's a great question. I'm not really sure what the answer would be. Or, oh, that's interesting. Are you thinking that it might be relevant because of X, Y, or Z? You can kind of think out loud a little bit, and it's okay to not know. Oh, that's what I just saw. Look at that. You can also open the floor to input from colleagues. Again, you're the expert, so you don't want to defer to, if you have research team members there or your mentor there, you don't want to defer to them for everything, but it's also fine to say, I'm really not sure about that. Dr. So-and-so, what do you think? Again, if we already knew all the answers, we wouldn't need to do the research. The audience really wants you to succeed. If they're asking because they're interested, so don't feel nervous about that. Helpful hints and reminders, definitely proofread your presentation, practice out loud in front of your mentor and colleagues. This is big. Get somebody that you can practice it out loud, because in your mind, you know it, but when you're actually having to say it out loud, it's difficult. Record yourself when presenting and then play it back, which can be painful, but it's a good way to figure out where you need to change a bit. Time yourself. So the question came up about the timing. We have moderators in the room. Their job is to keep you on time. How strict they are on that varies, but they really do try to keep people to the limit, because what happens is if you go over your limit, then another student won't get there full time. And we don't want that to happen. So it's important that you stick to the time limit. Now, having said that, they probably won't just, say, sit down. They'll kind of give you warnings, and they'll say, okay, you have 5 minutes left. Oh, you have 2 minutes left, or 3 minutes. Like they'll kind of help you see. And as you see that time going down, you're going to need to speed up a bit. The audience is rooting for you. Okay, so we're at the end of the general presentation. I'd like to take just a few minutes for questions about presenting itself, and then we'll move on to talking about the Summer Research Conference. So are there any general questions about presenting? The time, so a lot of these I think are probably ones that we will talk about in the SRC section. Who do we assume the audience, time limit, specific way we should format the references. For formatting the references, just do whatever is conventional in your field. So yeah, we'll get to the timing of it all, Q&A. Okay, so I think that all of this will be answered in the specific Summer Research Conference. Again, it's on the 13th and 14th. It's in the Price Center and the Student Services Center. We have over 350 student presenters from 58 colleges and universities, which is fantastic. So we're going to have 5 presentation sessions on Wednesday and 2 on Thursday, and we'll see the specific calendar or agenda in a sec. So there'll be 14 to 15 concurrent panels during each session. So in each session, there's going to be like 14 different panels going on. And I think on the next slide, that'll make a little more sense. So here's the details. So you'll see on Wednesday, check-in is at 8 to 8:30, and there's breakfast. Then there's welcoming remarks. The part where it says morning session, afternoon session, both on Wednesday and Thursday, that's where it's going to be those 14 or 15 different panels taking place all at the same time. So we'll be scattered throughout the Price Center and in different smaller rooms. So the rooms have a capacity, probably 20 to 40 or 50. Typically, the audience size is probably in the 15 to 20-ish range, just depending on the particular panel. So we start in the Price Center West Ballroom, but you're not going to be presenting. I mentioned that there's 380 presenters. You're not going to be presenting to 380 people, so don't worry about that. All right, next slide. Okay, so the panels are organized around topics and themes. We work very hard to try to get these topics and themes so that they're related to one another. You can do the next bullet if you want. So there's going to be about 3 to 4 presentations within each panel, and those 3 to 4 presentations are loosely related. We will be sending that information out as soon as we possibly can, but if you find that you're on a panel and you're like, oh, this doesn't really make sense to me, it would have made a lot more sense for me to be on this other panel, don't worry about it. All of the panels have some themes that are kind of throughout the different talks. It's okay if you're on a panel and it doesn't match perfectly. Not every talk is going to be intricately related to every other talk on the panel, and that's fine. Sometimes you might see another panel that you think, oh, I really should have been on that one, but there can be scheduling issues both for the students and the mentors that might have led to some constraints that put you on the panel that you are. We have had students in the past who have said, oh, I really don't want to be on this panel. And then they later discover, oh, that was really interesting. It was, although it wasn't as closely related to my talk as I had thought, it was related in kind of some unique ways. So be open to that. So 12 minutes for individual presenters and 3 minutes for Q&A, 16 minutes for pairs of presenters, and 4 minutes for Q&A. So the Q&A will follow your talk immediately. You'll talk for 12 minutes, and then you'll have 3 minutes for Q&A. If you go over, and really please don't, because that just is not ideal. If you go over, that would eat into the Q&A time. Because again, we need to make sure that we're keeping the panel session such that each student gets their full time to present. Arrive early to your session. That gives you time to upload your presentation onto the computer that's there. And I strongly recommend at least 3 ways to access your presentation. What this means is have it in the cloud, email it to yourself, have it on a thumb drive. You don't want to get there and find that your thumb drive is corrupt, or you dropped it on the way, or you can't log on to your email, or whatever the issue is. Have it in multiple different ways so that you can access it easily. I think there's a question of if you go under, that's fine. Think about it though. You've been working on this all summer long. 12 minutes is not a lot. So it's not that we expect people to finish at 11:59 exactly, but if you find that you're finishing in 9 minutes, that may suggest that maybe you could, add a little bit, expand a little bit on what you're saying. All right, next. So the panels, there'll be these panels that have 4 talks in them, and we ask that, so when you present, you need to be in that room for the entire time of your presentation. So you will be there for your entire panel. The times that you're not presenting, you should be going to other talks. So let's say that you're presenting in the first group on Wednesday morning. Once you're done presenting, for all of the other panels, you should be going to those talks. And it's fine if you look at the program and you're like, ooh, I really want to go to the first talk in this one and the third talk in that one. You don't have to stay in the same panel the whole time other than your own. But we do ask that you enter and exit panels between presentations. In other words, don't halfway through somebody's talk, get up and walk out. Similarly, don't walk into a room halfway through somebody's talk. In general, you can kind of try to guess when the third presentation in a panel will start based on this idea that if it's single presenters, it'll be 12 minutes plus 3 minutes. So the first presentation would be roughly the first 15 minutes of the panel. The second presentation would be roughly the second 15 minutes of the panel. So that gives you a sense of what to expect. If you have friends or family who are coming, that can also give them a sense of what to expect. But if there's a talk you really want to go to, or if you have friends or family coming to your talk, be aware that if somebody goes fast, or sometimes the order of presentations has to change, or somebody doesn't show up, there's a possibility that I'm just going to allocate 15 minutes per panel and guess it that way. That might not always be an exactly accurate way to predict. So just kind of keep that in mind. Next, please. Stay in your session for the entirety of your panel. We already mentioned that. Guests. We would love to have guests come and watch your presentation. There's no cost for people who come as a guest. There are not meals available to them. There are meals available to student presenters and the moderators and volunteers. But other than that, the meals are not available, but there's plenty of places to find in the Price Center to eat. We do ask that people register ahead of time as a guest. That allows for faster check-in. Even if you register in advance, we want all guests to check in when they get to the Price Center. The reason for this is a big event, and it's really helpful for us to show the university that this is a big event. And if we say we had 1,000 people come to this event, and we can demonstrate that with the check-ins that we had, that's great. That's really advantageous. So please do ask your guests to register and ask them to check in. Also, from just a safety perspective, it's helpful for the university to know, oh, there's 500 people in the Price Center right now, just in case something crazy happens. Okay, visitor parking is available in the Gilman structure and the South parking structure. This information, and actually all of this information is available on the website. I think Sophia probably already put it into the chat. So a lot of these details are available on the website. Just be aware that you do have to pay to park, and they will ticket. So just know that. All right, next. There's the website. The program will be posted soon. Check for additional updates. There's an email address to, if you have any questions. On that website, there's a section for student presenters, I believe, that has additional information. So a lot of the information that we've talked about today will be there. So, any of the details that you're not sure about, definitely check the website. And then if you can't find it there, feel free to email us. And with that, I believe is the next one, questions?
I get a question about, can I use a UCSD logo presentation slides on Google Slides? How many slides minimum? Do I have to submit presentation slides for review?
Okay, so we'll kind of work our way back. You do not need to submit your slides for review to us. I strongly recommend that you submit them to your mentor, and ideally you and your mentor have kind of gone over the presentation before it happens, and the mentor can give you feedback and that sort of thing. There's not a minimum number of slides. Again, generally 1 slide per minute, so people usually have about 12 slides. Sometimes that includes the intro slide and the acknowledgement slide, but those don't really take a full minute to say usually. So there's not a minimum or a maximum, but just kind of keep in mind that having that rhythm tends to work well. again, it depends on the field, the discipline, the topic. Sometimes there are things that make more sense to have fewer slides. So there's not a real concern with that. Can we connect directly to the projectors from our computers? Yes, you
Sorry,
need.
before you get to that question, there was one question about using the UCSD logo
Okay, I
from the
don't.
same person
Okay,
about the minimum slides.
okay, I'm not seeing it, but basically just can we use the UCSD logo?
The question is, can I use a UCSD logo presentation slides on Google Slides?
I guess I'm not sure what a UCSD logo presentation slides refers to. If you're asking whether you can use the UCSD logo, yes, absolutely. Oh, it has pre-automated Google slide template on Google Slides. I am not familiar with that. My guess is that that would be fine. Sophia, what do you know anything more about that?
Not familiar, but yeah, I think that if it has it and it's available for you to use, you can use it.
Yeah, and it has the UC San Diego logo in every corner for the template. Yeah, that's great. In terms of using the UC San Diego logo, there are some very specific branding guidelines. So you might look, so if this the pre-automated Google Slides is something that UCSD has put out, then they've already taken care of that. If your lab uses it already, then that's great. If you don't want to do that, you can certainly go to the branding site for UCSD and get one of the logos and just kind of read about the directions for what is and isn't appropriate use of logos.
Thank
Um,
And then I think we can get to the connecting directly to projectors from our computers.
yes, so if you want to bring your own laptop, you can. You will need to have it with you all day. We don't really have a good spot to store the laptops. And sometimes we found that that works very well and students are able to connect quickly. Sometimes it's a little more difficult to connect to the projector. So I recommend if you're doing that, that you still have it so that if it does not work to connect to your laptop, there would still be an alternate way to connect. And also definitely have whatever cables you might need. I think this is particularly true for people who have Macs, that we don't necessarily have Mac cables. So just bring whatever cables you might need and be prepared, just worst case scenario, that if it doesn't work, that you would be able to go ahead and use a flash drive or something like that. So in terms of how many times will you present in total? Once per session, so around 7. No, you'll actually only present once. So it's a lot of work for one glorious presentation. So I think, Sophia, can you go back to the one that shows the schedule? Basically, you will be presenting at one of these times. So either morning session 1 on Wednesday, morning session 2, afternoon 1, 2, 3, morning 1 or 2. So of those 7 different times, you'll be presenting at one of those times. And again, the panel will take an hour. So let's say that you're presenting Wednesday morning in session 2. You'll be presenting from 10:30 to 11:30. At all of the other times, you should be going to other talks. For students who are in the summer research program, you're required to attend the entirety of the conference. So although you're only presenting once, you should plan to be there for the entire thing. The information about when you will be presenting and all of that sort of thing will be coming out as soon as possible. We're just kind of finalizing it. We recognize that you want to know, your mentors want to know, friends and family want to know. So we're working on it. You will get that prior to checking in. It's not something that you'll just find out on the day of. Yes, and you are not required to bring your own laptop. We will definitely have PCs in every room. Other questions, either that people want to put in the chat or unmute?
I think there are several questions that just asked, will we receive a copy of the slides or this recording? And we will be sending you to all registered presenters a link to the slides as well as a link to the recording once we have that available, hopefully in the next 24, 48 hours or so. But we will also post it on the SRC website under the student presenters page. So keep an eye out for that there too.
And Sabrina, if you change around your summer session classes and have conflicts, if you are in one of the SRP programs, please reach out to your coordinator because students in the SRP are not permitted to take classes, so there shouldn't be an issue from that. If you're not in one of the SRP programs and have issues, I would reach out to UG Research right away because the schedule is finalized, so just reach out to us.
And I think students that had class conflicts were considered if they noted that in their conflicts.
Yes, absolutely. So if you put down in the registration form that you had some conflicts, that was taken into account. Are there podiums in the room? In some of the rooms, but not all of them. So once you have the schedule, you'll see what room you're in and you can kind of go and take a peek. Other questions that people might have?
It's a question about practicing. Oh, this was sent to me directly. Is there a computer in the room that we could practice on that's similar to the ones in the day up? And they will be the same kind of laptop. So it should be able to be something you can test out during the practice sessions if you do have a practice session available to you.
So are they asking,
Can
yeah,
they use a computer that will be similar to the ones that are available at the conference
okay.
to practice?
Yeah, so the question that was about how often or how many times you'll present was answered. You'll present once. So when you see, if you look at the slide that's up right now, there's 7 different sessions. You will be presenting at one of those 7 sessions.
I have a private question that asks, when guests register, do they register for a specific day?
No, the registration is just a general registration and they are welcome to come both days or one day. They're welcome to come to just part of it. So let's say you're presenting Wednesday in morning session 2, guests are welcome to come just to morning session 2, and that's fine. If they, for again, the students in the SRP programs are expected to come to the entire thing, but guests are welcome to come. Yeah, they might come to your talk and then they might say, oh, this is fantastic. I'm going to stay all afternoon. And that's fine too.
There were a couple questions I got about clickers, and I do want to clarify, there will be clickers available in every room. I will note that the clickers will have laser pointers on them, but the laser pointers do not work well on TV screens. Many of the rooms do have TV screens, so that may make it hard for you to point with a laser pointer, in which case you will need to use perhaps your hand or some other thing to point at what you want to talk about. So it depends on the room, unfortunately, but many of them do have TVs which don't work with laser pointers. There
And
are, I think, digital pointers that you can use in PowerPoint or Google Slides that might help you point at things as well.
yeah, and I think certainly having a pointer, whether it's a digital one or a laser pointer, if it works, can be helpful. But don't worry too much. The rooms are not huge. They'll be kind of like a screen or like a TV screen or a projector screen, and you can like physically point to it. So don't let the, oh, will there or won't there be a clicker and a pointer be too much of a concern. Just kind of go with the flow and you'll be fine. In terms of the rooms, once the schedule comes out, you can go over to the PC if you want, or if you're not local to UC San Diego, if you go online, it provides information about the different rooms and you can kind of see what they look like just so you can visualize where you'll be. So I think we are at time. I am happy to stick around to answer any other questions, but we'll call this the official end to the presentation. You're all going to do great. You've been working hard. I love this conference. It's always so exciting to see the work that people are doing. It's fascinating and it's kind of exciting and intriguing to hear about some of the hiccups that you might have experienced. So don't worry about that at all. and just have fun with it. Try to enjoy it and know that this is just the first of many presentations, or maybe not the first, but this is one of many presentations you'll probably be doing. And again, I'll stick around. Sophia will stick around. So if anyone has any additional questions, please feel free to let us know.
And for anybody who was looking for the practice session sheet, it was unavailable to edit. It is now available to edit. So please go ahead and take a look for that. Thanks.